Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. It's go home week before Summerslam 2019 and I'm reporting to you on the road. Let's get right down to it. Raw opens with a tribute to the shooting victims in El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio. We then get what I believe is the first actual opening credits to Raw in what feels like forever. I can't remember the last time they actually did an opening credit sequence on the show, but it gets cut off partway through as Samoa Joe is on the announce table yelling about how he's been accused of being the one to almost flatten Roman Reigns last week on SmackDown. One thing I think is funny about how they've been trying to explain away how the big old tumble on SmackDown went down, where it says, oh, it was actually a forklift driver, and oh, it was actually a temp forklift driver replacing the original forklift driver who was sick. There's a lot of extra detail going into the storyline that does not need to be there. Also, if it were a forklift pushing all this everything over, wouldn't you have been able to hear it? Forklifts are pretty loud. Becky Lynch's music then plays and we go to our first match of the night. Aside from the shooting victim tribute, which is not really part of this opening bit officially, I think the opening segment was actually pretty well done. The unscripted nature of Samoa Joe interrupting the new opening sequence for the show was a nice touch. So the first match is Charlotte and Becky Lynch, unlikely tag team partners, taking on Natalya and Trish Stratus, who's in her first match on Raw in about a year. This is kind of weird seeing Trish like this, because obviously they're trying to build her up for the match at SummerSlam, but it just feels kind of like, oh, she's here all of a sudden, just legends can come and go, and it's not a big, for the big deal they're making of Trish Stratus being at SummerSlam, it's suddenly not as big a deal when Trish just shows up and wrestles, kind of in this, what's essentially a throwaway match, because she doesn't even get one move in as the match goes on. Basically, after Becky tags herself in, Charlotte takes her out, Natalya puts her in a sharpshooter, but Becky is able to grab the ropes, Natalya does not let go, and the match is turned into a disqualification. So like I mentioned, Trish does absolutely nothing in the matchup, and so of everyone in this match, Natalya probably has the most to gain from this segment, making her look very tough, really wants to, very tenacious in putting the sharpshooter in, and we'll see more of that later in the week. Next match sees Rey Mysterio taking on Andrade. It's a follow-up to last week's Gauntlet match when Andrade ripped Mysterio's mask clean off his head, and is reigniting that old rivalry that we saw a lot earlier in this year that really should have led to a WrestleMania matchup, but for whatever reason, we never actually got it. My favorite part of this matchup is when Rey does his belly slide out of the ring into a sunset flip on the outside. That was pretty cool. Rey's just kicking out of everything Andrade has to offer. Ultimately, a cheap shot by Zelina Vega allows Andrade to win with the hammerlock DDT. Shady finish aside, this is a really fun match. I really enjoyed these guys' work. They always put out good work. It's time now for Maria Kanellis' OBGYN appointment, filmed in a place that looks suspiciously like just another part of the arena. In the examination room, Mike hugs Maria on the stirrups, and then you see this hand come down and count the three. The doctor, whose back was turned, was revealed to be the referee the entire time. So Mike actually did it, and he actually beat his own wife. He pinned his own wife. Saying beat his own wife sounds very bad out of context, but he pinned his own wife, Maria, his pregnant wife, to become the new 24/7 champion, and he runs out, and he sees R-Truth and Carmella in disguise. R-Truth says, OBG, why not? And pins Mike to regain the championship and runs off. Good lord. I'm kind of shocked they didn't actually kind of go with this angle of Maria as champion a bit longer than a week. You had some real fun with that, but they just kind of killed it right off immediately. I mean, when I last week said that, oh, wouldn't it be funny if she had the belt all the way up to when she was having the child and R-Truth shows up and beats her, like that, I didn't really expect that to happen. I did not expect it to happen so soon that R-Truth would get the belt back, but here we are. It's Bronky Brock time. Heyman and Lesnar are in the ring, and they show the clip from last week where Lesnar destroys Seth Rollins and makes him spit out all that red viscous fluid. Heyman says that Rollins has more balls than brains, and out comes Seth himself, and he's just limping his way down the ring holding a chair. Honestly, between his gait and the fact he had a hat on his head, I thought it was somebody else. But anyway, Seth is very, very visibly in pain, limping his way to the ring. He gets in the ring, and then Brock just beats his ass like the idiot that Seth is. He just gets beat up, thrown around, F5, and that's where that whole thing ends. And Seth has this kind of courageous speech as he's recovering, and he's saying he guarantees he will beat Brock for the championship. All the while, fans are chanting, "What?" at him. Yeah, great look for who's supposed to be your top baby face on the show. I get why they did it. They're trying to build up sympathy for Seth in the build-up for this matchup here, and I think last week accomplished it better than this week, because, last week, that's fine. We see Brock do that to his opponents all the time where he beats them up. This really made Seth look very dumb. The fact he was clearly not able to even raise a fist to Lesnar, even though there was an opening, at least one opening, where Seth could have hit him with a low blow. I thought that's what they were going to build toward, but we didn't get that, and so Seth just gets totally beat down and humiliated here, and so he also refuses medical attention. Again, trying to make it look strong and courageous others, but this one seems especially foolish on his part from a character standpoint. Backstage, Kurt Angle's in the house. He's in his hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's going to be the guest referee in the Drew McIntyre-Cedric Alexander match coming up later. The Street Profits interrupt. They're about to all toast with some milk in their solo cups when Drew McIntyre shows up and then basically threatens Angle to call it right down the middle, daddy. The Viking Raiders take on some local talent up next. It's a squiggity squash match, but I will say I popped big for this one move Eric does where he takes one of the local guys, pulls him through the ropes on the apron and hits him with a German suplex. Nice spin on that move. And then we go to a Harley Race tribute package. Of course, Race passed away this past weekend. Not much else I can say that wasn't said more eloquently by those far more qualified to talk about him than I. Obviously, Race was a legend in this wrestling business. He helped inspire and helped just motivate so many wrestlers over the decades, be they his colleagues and his contemporaries in the 70s and 80s, but also those he helped train and mold as the head of WLW in Missouri. So obviously throughout the decades, in some form or another, Harley's been very integral and very vital and inspirational to the wrestling business. If you know anything about his backstory and his growing up, he had a lot of setbacks, a lot of tragedies in his younger life before he got to where he was in wrestling. So he's definitely tough in more ways than one. He definitely lived a full life as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. So we get that match between Drew McIntyre and Cedric Alexander up next with Kurt Angle as the guest referee. My favorite part of the whole setup with this matchup is the lower third they show to advertise the match early in the night, where they've got this really, really badly photoshopped picture of Kurt Angle on the referee's shirt. It's hysterical. But the match doesn't really go anywhere. Drew beats up Cedric on the outside before the bell rings. Cedric with the tornado DDT on the floor. That spot looks pretty rough, and then the lights go out. Lights come back up. The Fiend is attacking Kurt Angle with the mandible claw, and that's where the thing ends. So more spookiness by the Fiend here. Seems like kind of a waste of Angle to use him in this capacity, even though he gets the hometown pop. It's just like, there's other people you could have had in place to build the Bray Wyatt thing going into SummerSlam. And also, they keep kicking the can with this Drew versus Cedric feud. It began about a month ago, right before Extreme Rules, and they just keep kind of like doing these like short matches or non-matches that start out as supposed to be wrestling matches, but then they just break down. One day we'll get like a proper, actual competitive match between these two. At this point, I'm not sure when it's going to be. Tag Team Champions versus Tag Team Champions as the New Day take on the OC. And Gallows, by the way, nice little throwback to his days in New Japan, wearing the face paint, reminiscent of the Bullet Club. The match is immediately thrown out, though, when AJ Styles interferes. Ricochet comes in to even the odds, and we have a six-man tag team match play. Some entertaining action here throughout the match. The hot tag alone was pretty nuts, but ultimately Xavier Woods loses the match for his team after eating the Magic Killer, so the OC win the day. Good hype for them, a good build for them and AJ Styles going into SummerSlam. In a follow-up to what happened at the top of the show, Samoa Joe's now in the ring, and he's threatening to shut down Raw until Roman Reigns appears and apologizes to Joe for implicating him in the forklift tumble-down attack thing that happened last week on SmackDown. So then Joe camps out in the ring for a while, waits for Roman to show up. He does not, so Joe goes up to meet him in the parking lot as Roman Reigns is pulling in. So I don't know how much longer Joe is expecting to wait, if Roman hadn't even actually physically arrived at the building yet. So anyway, they're jaw-jacking in the parking lot. All of a sudden, a car shows up and T-bones Roman's rental car. He dives in. He avoids getting directly hit by the other car. Then the other car speeds off, and then Joe kind of reluctantly is like trying to help Roman Reigns as, he's waiting for him. He's calling for a medic and everything. Very rare showing of mercy here by Samoa Joe. And I think it's nice. It's not like a betrayal of character. It just shows that he's like in a really weird place because he really wants to fight Roman Reigns and beat him up. But it's like, well, damn, this thing happened. This far more serious thing than my own grudge. This guy almost got hit by a car and almost got killed or whatever. So kind of nice little wrinkle there for Samoa Joe. But yeah, the big question is, who is driving the charcoal-colored sedan? I bet you it wasn't Daniel Bryan who drove it, though, because he would have driven a Prius. Your main event match is a fatal four-way elimination match for the women's tag team titles. I think those phrases, fatal four-way and elimination, directly conflict with each other, though, as the Iconics defend against the Kabuki Warriors, Fire and Desire, and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Mandy eliminates Billie Kay first. The Iconics are no longer the tag team champions. New champs are guaranteed here. Asuka makes Mandy Rose tap, and then it's down to the Kabuki Warriors and Alexa and Nikki. Alexa hits Kairi Sane with Twisted Bliss to win win the tag team titles. So, you know, it's a good match, very cool and kind of exciting to see the titles change hands in this way. Though of those three teams, Nikki and Alexa was the one I least expected to win, just because it's the least cohesive team. I feel that since the handicap match at Extreme Rules, especially since that angle with Bayley ended, these two, their storyline has completely just kind of gone flat. Their characters and whatever story they have has been kind of watered down, and instead of having that built-in tension of like, will Alexa turn on Nikki, like instead of having a natural resolution to that, it's just kind of like, oh, they're fine now. They're totally fine. It's always been fine, and there was never a proper like movement or action that really led to one outcome or the other with that relationship. I think it's kind of weird. They don't have the look or the chemistry of any of their teams, and you could argue that Kairi Sane and Asuka are similarly thrown together, and they don't really make any sense, but at least they have some chemistry to them. And I said it before, I'll say it again. I love the Iconics and their shtick. I think they're great heel wrestlers, and their characters are so hilarious, and I think they could have been really good as tag team champions, but ultimately, you know, they just were never used on television. And I think that people want to complain about the Iconics as tag team champions, now they killed the belts or whatever. I don't think we're at that point yet, because the belts are so new. It's kind of hard for them to have any credibility if they're so new. But, you know, I think you could have had a much better reign with them as tag team champions. You just had them on television, and they could have kept doing their coward thing, but it was so spread out since WrestleMania. I just felt like, what was the point of any of that? And for it to end this four-way matchup here with, you know, not a ton of build to it. Like we were supposed to have, you know, 2 weeks ago they said, oh, Fire and Desire are going to have a tag team championship match, and if they win, they'll have a match for the tag team championships. And then nothing happened of it, and then we get this match on Raw. That's kind of a make good it feels. It was a good match, but just kind of not the outcome I would have expected. And, you know, again, kind of pour one out for the Iconics and their tag team title reign, which I still feel could have gone so much better. The show ends with a special contract signing edition of Miz TV. The Miz brings out Shawn Michaels for some reason, and then Dolph Ziggler. Ziggler talks a big game, says he's the biggest thing to happen to pro wrestling since Shawn lost his smile, which I don't think in the grand scheme of things and all the list of big things to happen in pro wrestling, Shawn losing his smile doesn't rank that high up, I don't think. But anyway, Miz cuts a pretty good face promo, and then it's revealed that it's actually these two are having a match out on Raw the night after SummerSlam. Miz has willingly given up his spot at SummerSlam for someone else to fight Ziggler, and it's insinuated as Shawn Michaels. He says it's not me, and then it's actually Goldberg. So yes, after weeks of speculation and a lot of rumors that I myself were kind of like denying it to my own self, now we're going to have Goldberg versus Ziggler at SummerSlam. And my question is why? I mean, it's just a weird red herring to have Shawn Michaels out there week after week and then ultimately say, swerve, it's Goldberg with less than a week to go before SummerSlam. I feel that this match is even more pointless than Charlotte versus Trish. You can even argue that match makes more sense, though, because at least Charlotte is in this position where she has to get something to prove, and she wants to prove she's the best by beating one of the best female wrestlers of all time. I get that one. This Ziggler, Goldberg match smacks of what somebody thought was a dream match, but you could argue that Ziggler and Michaels is a way bigger dream match than Ziggler and Goldberg. The heat and the build of this is that, Dolph name dropped Goldberg a couple times in the last few weeks. That does not a SummerSlam match make, in my opinion. It's just very weird to me, and I don't know. It just seems like you've got these two matches with legends. We got Charlotte and Trish, and you've got Goldberg and Ziggler. You've got half of those two matches, you could have taken somebody else who's like not being used on television, or someone who could use a bit of a push on SummerSlam, but you're just giving it to these legends who, like, they're there with not a whole lot of build, and they're going to be gone after SummerSlam. Just makes you wonder why they're doing it, except maybe trying to get the nostalgia pop, but like, it's time to move on, I think. SmackDown begins with Charlotte Flair talking about Trish Stratus. She says that the athletes of today are so much better than the athletes of yesterday, which is why she wants to beat Trish. And she asks for a highlight package of her to be shown, but instead it's a highlight package for Trish Stratus, which catches Charlotte by surprise. Trish herself shows up in the ring, and she says she wants to prove to herself, most of all, that she can still hang and still compete with someone like Charlotte. And Charlotte welcomes Trish to her nightmare. Trish slaps Charlotte, and then Charlotte laughs it off. She must have just watched the Calamari Wrestler. That's pretty much that. I mean, I said that this match on paper is a better proposition than Goldberg Ziggler. I'm not like 100% sold on this matchup, because we got like 2 weeks of build before this, like, what is essentially a dream matchup. I'm not saying it's a bad idea for a match, but I think that if you're going to have a match like this, have more than 2 weeks of build for one of the biggest shows of the year. I just don't like there's seemingly lack of chemistry basically going into this. Trish to me doesn't feel like it doesn't seem like she's 100% into it, but it's I don't know. I mean, this match, like, I think it'll be good, but the build for it I've not been sold on. Your next match is supposed to be Rey Mysterio versus Dolph Ziggler, who actually trolls the fans by using Goldberg's entrance with the security and everything. I think it would have been great if he did what Chris Jericho did in WCW, where he tries to mock Goldberg doing the entrance and gets lost on the way to the ring, Spinal Tap style. The match doesn't really go anywhere. Dolph beats up Rey on the outside before the bell rings, where we've seen this before with Drew and Cedric the night before. Ali runs in, he's hopping mad. He wrestles Ziggler instead. Good little showing here by both guys. Ultimately, Dolph wins with the headbutt and the super kick and does the Goldberg tongue as he's pinning Ali to win. So yeah, strong. It's a good little match by both guys, and Ziggler looks strong going into his match with Goldberg, where he will almost definitely lose. Roman Reigns in a sit-down interview backstage. He's asked how he's doing after a couple of close calls in the backstage in the garage area the last week or so. Roman does apologize to Samoa Joe for dragging his name through the mud, so basically his name has been lifted. So Roman is looking for answers, and he'll try and get them later tonight. The challengers in the women's title matches at SummerSlam do battle in singles action up next as Natalya takes on Ember Moon. Match does not go very long though, as Natalya has Ember Moon in the sharpshooter on the outside. They're both counted out. Natalya does not let go. Bayley makes the save, and Natalya shoves Bayley and walks off. And so then Bayley helps Ember Moon up, and she's still very trepidatious toward Bayley after what happened last week when Bayley hit Ember with her finisher. And so we get kind of a double-edged build for each of the women's title matches, and a little bit here, a little bit of Bayley, but mostly just showing Natalya how tough she's being and how vicious she is with the sharpshooter and everything. Again, they're trying to make up for lost time and making her kind of a threat in the ring here. So of anyone, I'd say Natalya has actually been built up relatively well, but it's been kind of this crash course kind of way. It's the Kevin Owens show with special guest Shane McMahon. Kevin cuts off the Greg Hamilton entrance, then challenges Shane to put his career on the line, since Kevin's already putting his on the line in the match. Shane says no, and then says, I can beat you by pinfall, I can beat you by submission, I can beat you by countout or by disqualification, I can beat you with a goat, I can beat you with a boat. And then Kevin just says Shane has no balls. They're about to scrap when Elias shows up, and the 2-on-1 situation becomes too much for Kevin. Shane dumps the announce table on the outside onto Kevin, and then drop kicks a chair into his head as it's being sticking out from under the wreckage of the announce table. And so I think Shane looks very nasty here, looks very strong going into the match at SummerSlam. I think this segment here builds a lot more sympathy for Kevin Owens than the Brock Lesnar Seth Rollins thing on Raw was building sympathy for Seth, if that makes any sense. I think Seth just looks kind of foolish out there, already going in hurt, whereas Kevin is, he's fighting on his own here. Then there's this jumping attack from behind, which leads to more of the beatdown. I think this one did a better job building sympathy than the Raw equivalent between Seth and Lesnar. Sami Zayn shows up in the ring. He's going to talk about his match with Alistair Black at SummerSlam, which I was under the impression that they said it was going to be happening on SmackDown. So he's under the impression at SummerSlam, and then Alistair Black's music hits, and we get the funniest shot where Alistair Black is on his little lifting bed thing. He's the microphone. Oh no, Sami, the match is happening right now. I am dying. That is the goofiest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. No more promos from the prone position, Alistair. It's a good match though. Black wins the Black Mass, and poor Sami Zayn just can't buy a win. It's Firefly Funhouse time. Regular Bray Wyatt shows up at the Funhouse and says that Finn Balor's bravery is just ignorance in disguise. He reminds everyone the Fiend is coming at SummerSlam. You know who's been missing from the build in this Bray Wyatt Finn Balor match? Fucking Finn Balor! We see the return of contemplative Shelton Benjamin, then a backstage bit where Chad Gable is punked out by Elias, and Elias then leaves, and Chad looks kind of sad. Why wasn't he taking notes? And then we go to a Kofi Kingston hype package, which I must say was much stronger than the Randy Orton equivalent the previous week. Whereas Randy Orton's thing was just kind of reiterating the promo they had the week before that. I think Kofi's rebuttal promo was very strong, made him look very strong, and did a very good job of kind of showing, his meteoric rise for the past half a year or so, really showcasing how inspiring his ascent has been, not just for the fans of WrestleMania and everything, but also his home country of Ghana. And it did a really good job building him up as a really credible, strong babyface champion. I got some really big Bret Hart vibes from this promo, in all the best ways. In your main event, Big E and Xavier Woods take on Daniel Bryan and Rowan in non-title action. This is a really good match. A great sequence between Daniel and Big E following the hot tag. Ultimately, the match ends in a DQ and Rowan hits Xavier with steel stairs. The former tag champions lay out the new tag team champions to close out their segment, and then we go backstage to see Roman Reigns clearing out the locker room and confronting confronting Buddy Murphy. It's one of the few times we've seen Buddy since he's been called up to SmackDown. But then Roman interrogates him about, you know, what he knows about who was attacking Roman on Thursday and then on Monday. Buddy says he doesn't know, and so Roman starts beating Buddy up and trying to beat the answer out of him. Buddy eventually lets it slip that it was Rowan who was responsible for it. He said, I didn't see Daniel Bryan, but Rowan was there with a forklift. And so it ends on a shot of Rowan and Daniel in the ring. And I can't read Daniel's body language here because I can't tell if he's looking kind of sad because they got caught, or maybe he's like sad because like maybe Rowan did it. Like the question would be like, did Rowan do it at Daniel Bryan's bidding, or was Rowan going rogue? But aside from that storyline issue of like what's going to happen with Rowan's involvement, I feel they really rushed having this reveal of like who done it. The whole question of who was attacking Roman Reigns. I thought you could have milked this for at least one other week. Maybe have a thread weaving through SummerSlam. At the very least, have the reveal at SummerSlam or something, where Roman's just trying to figure out who's beating him or who's trying to attack him, and then he finds out there. I think that would have been okay. And are we going to try and get a Roman-Rowan match, like shoehorned in SummerSlam now that we've got this reveal at the very end of the go-home show? Or are they going to space this out to further down the line, the next pay-per-view? There's a lot of questions to where they're going to go with this, but I do think they kind of rushed the reveal of this just a little bit. I think you could have at least built this up to at least one more week before having the reveal. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. Which go-home show went home harder? In my estimation, that distinction goes to Raw. I think that both shows had at least one creative issue that made me scratch my head. But on the whole, I think that Raw's show was stronger. It was more entertaining, more interesting, more interesting, surprising things happening throughout the course of the night. You know, it's not surprising that SmackDown didn't feel like a very cohesive show when, from what I've been reading, they were literally rewriting the show multiple times from scratch up until like just an hour before showtime, which that's not really a good sign to be that volatile before going to air, and it really shows. And you know, Raw has that issue as well from time to time, but I feel that Raw just kind of like it carried itself with a lot of better moments. Still, again, some questionable moments in that show. Again, Rollins and Lesnar, that seemed really silly. Seems kind of counterproductive to what they're trying to do with Rollins. And then on SmackDown, their hot shot in the whodunit. I think they could have gone an extra week or two before they have the reveal, among other things. But I think that, you know, Raw, in my opinion, was the stronger show. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. I'm Brian Zayn, and I'll see you next time.